I was celebrating my promotion when my husband posted his mistress on his business page, cropping me out and calling her his true partner. He used my work, gave her credit, then said I dimmed everything, until I sent the original files to the press with receipts. I was sitting at a rooftop bar in downtown Chicago, toasting my promotion with a glass of champagne when my phone started vibrating like crazy. My coworkers were laughing, music was loud, and for once I felt light. It had been a long 2 years of working under him, Alex, my mentor, the man who told me I had the mind of a shark and the heart of a saint. I'd believed him. God, I'd believed him. Then my best friend, Mara, leaned across the table, her face pale. You need to look at Instagram. Now. The post was sitting right there, on the official page of our company. A full-body picture of Alex and a woman I'd never seen before, posed in front of our new office banner. His hand was on her waist. Her smile was the kind people practice in mirrors, too confident, too knowing. The caption read, "My true partner in life and work, couldn't have built this without you." And there I was in the reflection of the glass door behind them, cropped out, just a blurry outline. It took me a second to process what I was seeing. The pitch deck on the table, mine. The tagline behind them, mine. The campaign that had just gone viral and landed us 2 new clients, all mine. And that woman, his true partner, was standing there holding the same deck I'd stayed up 3 nights building. Comments were flooding in, "Power couple goals. She's a genius. Love how you elevate women in business, Alex." He was replying to every one of them with heart emojis and gratitude. My stomach sank as I realized the truth. He'd taken everything, my work, my ideas, even my professional reputation, and handed it to some woman he'd started sleeping with. Within an hour, the team group chat was buzzing. "Wait, who's she? Are they together? She's running your division now." I didn't answer. I just sat there, staring at my reflection in the glass railing, wondering how I'd let him make me this invisible. When I confronted him 2 days later in his office, he didn't even deny it. "She knows how to shine," he said. "You just dim everything around you. You make people uncomfortable when you take charge. It's better this way." That line carved something cold and deep inside me. He had used me, my work, my connections, my ambition, and replaced me with someone who knew how to smile for the cameras. And he was proud of it. But the worst part wasn't losing credit. It was that my clients, were congratulating her. My inbox went from full to silent in a week. People stopped looping me in. My name started fading from projects I'd built from scratch. Then, a month later, she, the true partner, got featured in Chicago Business Weekly for revolutionizing their company's brand identity. They printed my designs, my copy, my strategy map. That was the day I stopped crying. Because I realized something no one else knew: the files they'd stolen weren't just mine. They were traceable. The metadata still had my name. The pitch logs, timestamps, client emails, everything. And when I saw the line in the article quoting her, word for word from my draft, I knew exactly how I was going to burn them both. I sent an email to someone who'd been waiting years for a scandal like this. A journalist who loved nothing more than exposing corporate fraud. I attached the original files. But that wasn't all. I attached something else, something neither of them knew I had. Something that could end both their careers in one night. Before all that chaos, before the Instagram post and the humiliation, I used to think Alex and I were a team. When I joined his marketing firm 3 years ago, it was just him, a handful of freelancers, and a dream that barely paid rent. I was the first full-time hire. 27, hungry and willing to build something from nothing. He used to tell people, "She's my right hand." I'd believed that meant something. We were working 16-hour days out of a converted warehouse in West Loop, surviving on takeout and adrenaline. I built the systems, wrote the client decks, created branding proposals, negotiated partnerships, handled the legal filings, everything. He'd charm the clients and pitch, but I made sure the pitches had substance. And when he got the first big client, a startup skincare brand, it was because I'd stayed up for 3 nights straight perfecting the launch plan. We hit record numbers. He called me at 2 a.m. crying. "We did it," he said. "We're unstoppable." For a while, I thought he meant it. The shift started small. He'd forget to introduce me in meetings. Say I instead of we. When I tried to speak up, he'd put his hand on my arm and whisper, "Let me handle it." "You're too intense." I brushed it off, told myself it was strategy. Then came the late nights where he'd call me partner 1 second and tell me to tone it down the next. He had this way of praising me right before cutting me down, like it was all part of some test I didn't know I was taking. Still, I stayed. Because I wanted the company to succeed. Because I'd invested everything, even parts of myself I didn't realize were being chipped away. Then, early this year, we landed the deal that would change everything, a national luxury brand rebranding their image. It was huge. The kind of client that could put us on the map. I poured everything into that project. Late nights, missed birthdays, I even skipped my mom's surgery to finish a proposal Alex said had to be perfect. He didn't thank me. He just said, "You're doing what needs to be done." When the campaign went viral, it wasn't "we did it." It was, "I did it again." That's when she showed up, Clara. He introduced her as a branding consultant. Said she was there to bring a feminine touch to our projects. The first day she came in, she didn't even bring a laptop, just a designer bag, fake lashes, and a smile like she already owned the room. She asked me questions about every client, every workflow. I answered, thinking she was part of the team. I didn't realize I was handing her the blueprint to my entire career. Then one day, I walked into the office early and found them in his glass-walled office, not working. He didn't even look ashamed. "Close the door," he said. "You're being unprofessional," like I was the problem. After that, things spiraled fast. She started attending all my client calls. Started using my notes, my slides, even my phrasing. And Alex let it happen. No, he wanted it to happen. When I confronted him, he smirked and said, "You need to learn to share space. Not everyone's threatened by talent." By the time that Instagram post went up, I was already halfway erased from my own company. But I had one thing they didn't: proof. And a folder I'd been quietly building for months. Every email, every file, every text that showed exactly how much of the company was me. When they finally crossed the line, I didn't have to dig for dirt. I'd already buried them in it. After that photo went viral, everything around me started to rot in slow motion. Clients who used to text me at all hours for advice suddenly redirected emails to her. Team members who once came to me for approvals started tagging Clara instead. My own assistant began asking her what to prioritize. Alex called it a transition period. I called it betrayal in slow bleed. They hosted company events without me. "For optics," he said. "It looks better to have her front-facing right now." Optics. That word made me sick. I kept showing up anyway. I'd built this place from a blank spreadsheet, and I wasn't going to let them erase me quietly. But it was like walking into a room where your ghost already worked there. Everyone smiled too tightly, avoided eye contact, and whispered as I passed. Then came the email, the one that broke me. Alex sent it to the entire team. "Effective immediately, Clara is stepping into a leadership role overseeing brand strategy. Please direct all communications to her moving forward." I wasn't even CC'd. He didn't fire me. He just made me disappear. I tried to fight back, set up a meeting with HR, but HR was him. Tried to call clients directly, but they'd been told I'd moved on. That was when the anger turned into something colder. Because while he and Clara were playing house on LinkedIn, bragging about their campaigns, I was combing through the digital skeleton of our company's files, the archives, the shared drives, the drafts no one remembered existed. And I found it, the original decks, every creative file, every timestamp, each with my initials, my notes, my login ID. I had legal proof of intellectual property theft, but that wasn't all. In one folder labeled Press Assets, I found something else, a private document. A fake financial summary he'd been showing clients to inflate success metrics. Numbers that didn't match the official reports. It was fraud, plain and simple. He doctored the analytics to make his new partner look like a miracle worker. And guess whose name was still on the registration paperwork for those clients? Mine. If it all came crashing down, the blame would have landed squarely on me. That's when I realized the depth of it. He wasn't just taking credit, he was setting me up to take the fall. So I started quietly backing up everything onto external drives, encrypted folders, even a cloud account under a fake name. I recorded every conversation, every message where he dismissed me. And while I smiled through team calls pretending everything was fine, I was also emailing a journalist at the Chicago Ledger under a burner address. She'd once covered Alex's rise to success. I figured she'd love to cover his fall, but I didn't send her everything yet. I waited, because I wanted to see how far they'd go, and I didn't have to wait long. 2 weeks later, Clara walked into the office wearing one of my old blazers, the navy one I'd left on the coat rack. She smiled and said, "Don't worry, I'll make sure your clients are in good hands." That was the last day I ever stepped foot in that building. I wasn't going to beg for recognition anymore. I was going to make sure everyone saw the truth, the real, unfiltered version of their power couple. But before I hit send on those files, something happened that made it all so much uglier than I ever imagined. Something that changed who I wanted to destroy first. 3 days before I planned to leak everything, I got a message from an unknown number. "We should talk. It's about Alex and Clara." At first, I thought it was spam until I saw the name under the signature. Daniel R. He was one of our biggest clients, a quiet tech founder who had always trusted me more than anyone else on the team. I'd helped his company launch their first national campaign. He never texted, never called. He wanted to meet in person, said it was sensitive. We met at a dim coffee shop in Wicker Park, the kind of place where no one bothers you. He looked tense, like someone who hadn't slept in days. He slid his phone across the table and said, "You need to see this." On the screen were screenshots of emails between Alex and Clara and him. Messages where Alex promised to phase me out quietly and move my accounts to Clara before she finds out about the new deal. Then I saw the attachment. It was a full proposal for a brand partnership with Daniel's company, signed by Clara and me. My name had been forged on the document, my signature copied perfectly. He said, "They told me you were still working with them, that you approved this." I felt sick. They weren't just stealing my work, they were using my identity to close deals. Deals tied to falsified data, fake metrics, and non-existent approval trails. If it ever went public, I wouldn't just look complicit. I could be charged. Daniel said he started digging after noticing inconsistencies in their invoices, money being rerouted to a consulting firm under Clara's name. That firm didn't exist. She and Alex were funneling client funds into a fake business account and using my credentials to make it look legitimate. It wasn't just fraud. It was deliberate, premeditated, and personal. When I got home, I tore through my old emails, contracts, signatures. And then I found the nail in the coffin, an email I'd supposedly sent to Alex 2 weeks ago approving a transfer of funds. Except I hadn't written it. And the timestamp showed I'd been on a flight to New York that day. They'd forged that too. That's when it hit me. Alex hadn't just replaced me. He was setting me up to take the fall for everything. All those times he'd told me to just trust him with client paperwork. He'd been copying my signature, collecting my templates, learning my phrasing. And Clara, the woman I thought was just a manipulative opportunist, was actually his full-blown co-conspirator. She wasn't just his mistress. She was his partner in crime. They'd built a story where I was the difficult ex-employee who went rogue, the perfect scapegoat if anyone started asking questions. I remember sitting there in my apartment that night, laptop open, the city lights blurring through my tears. Everything inside me went quiet. If I'd sent those files to the press then, they would have buried the story as a disgruntled former employee, revenge stunt. No one would have believed me. But if I could prove the fraud, the fake invoices, the forged signatures, the offshore transfers, then I wouldn't just take them down publicly. I'd destroy them legally. So I rewired my plan. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was justice, slow, sharp, and irreversible. I started reaching out to someone I hadn't spoken to in years, my ex, Nate, a forensic accountant. He'd once told me, "If you ever want to end someone without touching them, follow the numbers." And that's exactly what I planned to do. Only, I had no idea that by bringing him in, I was about to uncover something that would change everything I thought I knew about Alex and about myself. I called Nate the next morning before the sun was up. He picked up on the second ring, voice sleep-rough, but instantly serious when I said Alex's name. Nate had been a walking calculator, forensic accountant, forensic ego, whatever you want to call him, and he'd left the city 2 years ago after a fight with his old firm. We'd broken up messy, but we'd never stopped trusting each other with numbers or with truth. We met at his tiny office off Milwaukee Avenue. He poured coffee like he knew the conversation would be long. I dumped a thumb drive on his desk, everything I'd copied. Decks with my timestamps, the forged contract, invoices that redirected payments, screenshots of Alex's and Clara's messages, and the email thread where my supposed approval for a transfer had my signature pasted into it. Nate didn't react like most people. No outrage performance, no pats on the back. He slid the drive under his keyboard, opened his laptop, and started pulling threads. "First rule," he said without looking up. "Don't go to the press until you've got the paper trail. Journalists are good, but they eat mistakes. If they call this a revenge stunt, you're dead. We have to make this clean, criminal, provable, airtight." He ran the metadata like he was reading a face. Timestamps, IP logs, file edits. He traced the consulting firm payments to a shell account that cycled through 2 domestic LLCs, and then onto an entity registered in the Bahamas. He followed the money until he hit a dead zone, which, in his language, meant offshore laundering or someone clever enough to hide it. "Good," he said. "Now the forgeries." He pulled up digital signature analysis tools, comparing my actual signature to the ones in the fake documents. They aren't perfect copies. Whoever did this didn't bother to modify the pressure points, but it's close enough to fool a lazy client. We can prove manipulation if we pull the originals from the client servers. I gave him access to every client I could reach anonymously. I told him about Daniel, and Nate said, "We'll cross-verify. Email headers, server logs, IP addresses, they'll show where that approval actually came from." He smiled the small, dangerous smile he had when he liked the hunt. We mapped a strategy that night like surgeons planning an operation. Phase 1. Legal containment. Nate would assemble a package of incontrovertible proof, metadata trails, bank transfers, forged signature analysis, and we'd present it to a lawyer specializing in corporate fraud. Not a public lawyer, a private one with a reputation for quietly nuking people who thought they were untouchable. Phase 2. Client preservation. We'd reach out to the few clients who still trusted me, Daniel included, with redacted receipts and the facts, framed as a request for cooperation in an internal audit. If they backed us, their support would be the wedge to force the firm's auditors to open a real investigation. Phase 3. Controlled exposure. We'd give the press a package only after the lawyer told us it was safe. Not a revenge leak, but a legal-backed expose. Documents that proved fraud, signatures, offshore transfers, and the contracts showing my work origins. The goal wasn't just humiliation. It was to get a regulator or the U.S. Attorney's office to open a case. That would make the story impossible to bury. Nate's one condition: no improvisation. No midnight tweets, no anonymous drops, no grandstanding. Alex is arrogant but stupid. He loves the spotlight. If he smells exposure, he'll try to disappear the trail. We need to move fast and legally. I felt like I was assembling a bomb made of spreadsheets and ethics. Part of me wanted to burn everything publicly the second I saw Clara's face in that magazine, but Nate's plan iced the fury into something colder. Surgical, patient, lethal. Before we left, he said something that made me drop my coffee. "I've been following these accounts for a while. There's one thing that doesn't add up: a recurring wire to an entity tied to a nonprofit in DC. That's unusual for a marketing firm. Whoever owns that nonprofit, not who you think." I asked him who. He paused, then closed his laptop like the answer was a live wire. "Tell me you don't recognize the name," he said. I didn't. But I felt something shift in my chest, like the ground under the plan had a sinkhole I hadn't seen. Whatever Nate found connected Alex to someone bigger, someone with reach. Suddenly, this wasn't just about a stolen career and forged signatures. It might be about people with the power to bury a girl like me for good. The plan sharpened, and the risk lengthened. We could blow them up, but if Nate was right, we could also be stepping into a place that made career suicide sound like a hobby. I drove home in a daze, hands white on the wheel, and for the first time since the photo went public, I realized that destroying them might cost more than I was ready to pay. Nate dug until midnight. He was like a dog that's found a scent, impossible to calm, impossible to stop. He called me at 2 a.m. with his voice thin and fast. "You're not going to like what I found." He'd traced the nonprofit wire to a DC address, then followed a paper trail that turned colder the more he pulled. The nonprofit wasn't actually a charity. Its filings listed consultants, grant recipients, and capacity-building contracts, all thinly veiled invoices that led back to one private investment group, Meridian & Co., a firm that buys small agencies, installs a public face, strips the IP, and sells the brand to bigger players. They call it scaling. I called it predatory. But Meridian wasn't just a faceless private equity group. Their managing partner, the person who'd signed off on multiple transfers to that nonprofit, had a name I'd never expected to see tied to Alex's little company, Natalie Voss. Natalie Voss was a city power player. Board seats, gala photos, donor lists. She loved being in photos with senators, not with startup founders. Why was her firm funding Alex's, consulting through a nonprofit? Why were Meridian's payments lining up to Clara's shell companies? Nate sent me a PDF that made my hands go numb. Internal memos, dated months before Clara ever walked into our office. The memos described a playbook. Identify small shops with strong creative directors, destabilize internal leadership by elevating a charismatic partner, use the partner to reroute client accounts, then acquire the company at favorable valuation. There was even a line, cold as a legal brief, that read, replace originators with curated faces to increase marketability, legal cover via forged approvals if necessary. My stomach dropped so hard I had to sit. Clara wasn't a lover who'd seduced my boss. She was a mercenary, a hired face, trained to smile, to charm, to take credit. Alex hadn't fallen in love. He'd sold the company piece by piece. And he'd sold me first. I thought that was the worst of it. Then Nate closed one folder and sent another, a voicemail. It was recorded from a call between a Meridian exec and Alex, clear as day. In it, Alex laughed about the perfect transition, saying, she'll get everyone to follow her. The founder will step aside, the creative lead will melt down, and will scoop the IP for pennies. The exec's voice, smooth, clinical, replied, good, close the channels. Keep the nonprofit termination ambiguous. Reputation management will handle the rest. I played it 3 times because it felt like something that couldn't be true, but the words were there, his laughter, their plan, my name in the notes as risk mitigant. I felt a nail twist in my chest. The twist that clawed me raw wasn't just that they'd planned to steal everything. It was that they'd chosen people who trusted me to help them, clients, friends, people whose loyalty I'd earned, and weaponized that trust to make me look like the loose end. And then the last thing Nate sent me, which made my hands shake while I typed back to him, was a list of deals Meridian had closed in the last 5 years. Hidden inside the list were names of other creative directors, all gone quiet on LinkedIn, some with closed social profiles, some who'd moved to other cities with vague explanations. Patterns, victims, a method. I realized in a cold, awful way this was not personal revenge. This was an extraction model. They weren't clumsy lovers. They were professionals, and I was one of many. I pictured Clara's smile in that rooftop photo and felt bile rise. The media would make her the genius. Meridian would buy the firm. Alex would climb up on their ladder and wave. And I, with forged signatures and a quiet legal exposure, would be left holding the floor. Nate said 2 words I will never forget. They protect each other. Then he added, slower, Natalie Voss has friends in places that matter. Regulators, journals, boards. If we expose this without the right pressure, they'll bury the story under lawsuits and philanthropy. For the first time, the plan I'd honed into a scalpel looked like a match in a gasoline storm. I had evidence enough to ruin them, but the people behind them had reach. And one more thing Nate found, a direct payment from Meridian to an account used by a senior editor at a national magazine, turned my stomach cold. Someone at that level getting paid? That meant the press might not be an ally. It might be another pocket they'd bought. I sat on my couch with the call still open on my phone, the city night pressing against the window, and felt very small. I'd wanted to burn down the people who erased me. Now I had to decide whether to torch a business that touched real people, or to wait and find a way to cut the head off the Hydra without getting shredded. Either way, the thing that made my hands steady again, the thing that made the plan feel inevitable, was that I now knew why they'd done it. And knowing makes revenge both simpler and more terrible. When Nate handed me the last file, a single PDF with a stamped letterhead and a dry, corporate tone, I read it 3 times because I didn't want to believe the sentence that stared back at me. It was a post-mortem strategy memo from Meridian dated months before Clara walked through our door. It wasn't about markets or margins. It was about harvest cycles. They had literally written the firm's plan like a farming schedule. Identify fertile creative teams. Introduce a high-appeal figurehead to distract originators. Reassign accounts to scalable faces. Extract IP. Flip.